This is a story I haven't thought about in a long time, and for a pretty good reason. My friends and we used to love exploring. Growing up in New Jersey, there were always enough abandoned places within driving distance to keep us busy for hours on end. Looking back, a lot of the stuff we did wasn't all that cool, just decaying buildings, empty warehouses, that sort of thing. But every now and then, we'd stumble across something a little more interesting. One place that had been on our radar for a while was an abandoned middle school about a 30-minute drive away. I'm not going to say the name here for privacy, but if you're familiar with North Jersey's urban exploring scene, you probably know exactly which school I'm talking about. We'd seen pictures of it online and figured it was finally time to check it out for ourselves. It was late summer, and we were getting bored of our usual routine, which was basically just playing basketball in my backyard and driving around aimlessly. I can't remember who brought up the idea, but it was a pretty spontaneous decision. There were 4 of us that night: me, Yuri, Frank, and Freddie. Now, Frank and I were into graffiti, so we brought a few cans of black and white spray paint. Beyond that, the rest of my bag was filled with some Roman candles I had left over from the 4th of July. Our method for these kinds of adventures was always the same. We'd mess around inside, find our way to the roof, shoot off some fireworks, and then sprint out of there before any cops showed up. We figured this evening would be no different. Yuri was driving that night. He pulled onto a side street a few blocks from the school, and we all piled out. As we made our way towards the school, we were pleasantly surprised to see that the fence around the perimeter had already been cut. We were prepared to jump it, but I was definitely glad we didn't have to. The school was huge, way bigger than the pictures online had led us to believe. It would have taken forever to explore the whole thing, which was actually a good thing since the 4 of us were prone to getting bored very quickly. Frank led the way through the hole in the fence, followed by Yuri, then me, and then Freddie. Freddie was the most fearless of all of us, so he volunteered to bring up the rear. We found a door that wasn't boarded up and stepped inside. Even with our flashlights, it was eerie. Just picture your old middle school, but completely dead silent. Every hallway was stripped down to exposed wires and crumbling tile. Insulation was hanging from the ceiling, and there were bits of broken furniture scattered everywhere. The entrance we found opened right into a long hallway, which we happily started walking down after clicking on our flashlights. We all had these really powerful flashlights, which for some reason was something we were very proud of. And when I say powerful, I mean it. Mine cost like $60 and could light up an entire room with a beam so strong it would blind you for a few seconds if you accidentally looked at it. It was honestly a lot of money for a flashlight, but I thought it was worth it. The walls were just coated in graffiti. Some of it was really good, some of it was awful. Frank and I would pause here and there to check out a few tags, but mostly we just kept moving. I'll spare you most of the details about the building itself, but it was honestly really cool. Seeing the old auditorium, all those seats, and a stage that was literally falling apart, it was a dope sight. We made a quick loop through the basement, which was by far the most run-down part of the whole school. We didn't spend much time down there, partly because of how decayed it was, but mostly because I could tell my friends were getting creeped out. One of the rooms had this massive pentagram painted on the floor, which wasn't exactly a comforting sight. Yeah, it was creepy, but it wasn't unusual. Anyone who's done urban exploring knows these things pop up everywhere. We didn't linger. The 4 of us eventually made our way up to the 2nd floor. One of the classrooms had a completely untouched white wall, basically a blank canvas. Frank and I just grinned at each other and started throwing some paint up while Yuri and Freddie said they were going to keep exploring and look for a way to the roof. They disappeared down one of the dark hallways while we stayed back, busy with our tagging. Once we wrapped up our piece, Frank wanted to keep working on another section of the wall. I wandered out of the room to check out some of the better artwork along the nearby corridors. After about 5 minutes of just standing there admiring the art, I heard Frank yell out from behind me. He sounded angry. He asked if I was messing with him. I told him I had no idea what he was talking about. He just told me to quit the act, still sounding really pissed off. Before I could even figure out what he meant, he said, "I know you took my bag. I swore I didn't do anything, that I had been standing in the hallway the entire time." He seemed to believe me and muttered something about how it must have been Freddy. To be fair, it was exactly the type of thing Freddy had a tendency to do. Just to be safe, we searched the room with our lights, but there was nothing. The bag was just ... gone. We couldn't do much more tagging without the bag, since it had all the unused paint cans in it. So we decided to just go find the guys, who we assumed were probably on the roof by then. We went as far up as the stairs would take us, but unfortunately, they didn't lead directly to the roof. So we started wandering the floor aimlessly, checking different rooms for another way up. At one point, I walked into this small side room and I just froze. There on the wall was another pentagram, just like the one we had seen in the basement, only this one was much more ominous. It was freshly painted. I could tell because the paint was still dripping down the wall. And there, in the corner of the room, was Frank's bag, just sitting there. Frank stepped into the room right behind me and immediately saw what I was looking at. Without skipping a beat, he grabbed his bag off the floor and said in a pretty loud voice, "What the hell is wrong with him?" I didn't respond. Even as a joke, it just seemed like something that crossed the line a little too much, even for Freddy. We left the room and started walking down a random hallway in complete silence, just wanting to find our friends and get out. And just then, we heard these rapid footsteps thundering towards us. It was Freddy and Yuri, and they were sprinting, motioning frantically for us to follow them. We didn't even have time to be pissed at Freddy. We just ran. Here's a good rule to live by. If someone tells you to run, you don't stand around and ask questions. That's just plain stupid. You run first, and you ask questions later. And that's exactly what we did. As we sprinted down the hallway, Yuri desperately tried to explain what was happening. But between the echoing slams of our own feet and my heart pounding in my ears, I could barely understand a word he was saying. All I knew for sure was that we were running from someone, or, more likely, from multiple someones. The four of us were a panicked mess, trying to navigate the labyrinthine corridors of this abandoned school, desperate to find the exit we'd come through what felt like an eternity ago. Finally, we ducked around a corner in a wing of the building that felt completely unfamiliar and collapsed against the wall, gasping for air. We huddled together, a plan forming in our shared terror. If we could just find any stairwell and head down, we'd have to hit the ground floor eventually. The sounds of pursuit had faded, replaced by an eerie silence. So, we decided our best bet was to move slowly, stealthily, and be as quiet as humanly possible. We found a stairwell and crept down, counting the floors. When we were pretty sure we'd reached the ground level, we stepped out into another long, dark hallway. For a split second, I felt a wave of relief. We were in the clear, and that's when we heard it. A sharp, steady hissing noise slicing through the silence from the darkness up ahead. It was a bizarre sound, almost like someone was trying to poorly imitate a cat. All four of us froze, our blood turning to ice. We held our breath, praying that whatever made that sound hadn't seen us. We started to back away, inch by agonizing inch, trying to retreat without making a sound, but it was too late. A deep, gravelly voice cut through the darkness, and the words it spoke will be burned into my memory forever. He said, "I should have cut you when I had the chance." We didn't need to hear another word. We didn't wait, we didn't think. We just turned and ran for our lives. This time, it was different. This time, I could clearly hear them. Several sets of heavy footsteps pounding the floor right behind us. They were gaining. Their voices echoed through the halls, screaming the most vile, terrifying things you can imagine. They were yelling about how they were going to kill us, how every single exit was blocked, that there was no escape. It was, without a doubt, the most purely terrifying moment of my entire life. My mind was racing. I thought we'd have to run back upstairs, find a classroom, and barricade ourselves in, just waiting for them to find us. But then, Yuri, who was leading our desperate charge, veered sharply to the left, and there it was. Up ahead, a faint sliver of moonlight outlined a familiar shape, the very door we'd first entered. A surge of adrenaline hit me. We didn't slow down. We burst through that door and out into the cold night air, our lungs burning. We kept running, scrambling over the fence and not stopping until we were safely locked inside Yuri's car. Yuri slammed the car into drive and sped away, tires screeching on the asphalt. We all instinctively looked back at the imposing silhouette of the school, but it was just a dark, silent shape against the night sky. We weren't about to stick around to see if anyone followed us out. As we put distance between us and that place, Freddy finally told us what had happened before they found us. He explained that after they couldn't find a way to the roof, he and Yuri had come down a floor to look for me and Frank. That's when Freddy heard a weird, metallic clinking sound coming from one of the classrooms. Thinking it was us, he and Yuri cautiously pushed the door open. Inside the scene was something out of a nightmare. 3 figures, completely shrouded in dark cloaks, were sitting in a circle on the floor, hunched over something. According to Freddy, it looked like they were playing some sort of game, maybe with glass marbles or small stones, that were making the clinking noise. The moment Freddy and Yuri stepped into the room, the figures noticed them. They scrambled to their feet with unnatural speed and immediately started chasing them. Yuri and Freddy bolted, running back up to the 4th floor to try and lose their pursuers. And that's when they ran into us. As we tried to piece it all together, none of it made any sense. So many questions were swirling in my head. The biggest one for me was, why would they mess with us? Why steal Frank's bag and play games if their goal was to harm us? Freddy had a theory. He thought they were just toying with us, like a cat with a mouse. They believed we were so hopelessly lost in that maze of a building that they had all the time in the world to terrorize us before whatever they had planned. Yuri was convinced it was something far more sinister. He kept going back to that room we found with the pentagram on the floor. He thought it was some kind of cult, and that they were planning to use that room to kill us or sacrifice us in some bizarre ritual. My theory was a bit different. I don't think they were chasing us at all. At first, I think the one person was just messing with us upstairs, while the other 3 went straight down to the ground floor to cut off our escape. And the numbers didn't add up. There had to be at least 4 of them in there, the 3 Freddy and Yuri saw, plus the one who had been tormenting us from the shadows. Who were these people? What were they doing in that abandoned school? The whole thing was a tangled mess of terrifying questions with no answers. I know when I break it down like this, it might not sound as scary as it was, but I promise you, if you had been there, trapped in that darkness with those voices and footsteps behind you, you would have been absolutely petrified. We never went back to that school, not even during the day. As far as I know, the building is still standing there, holding its dark secrets. Maybe someone else has been brave enough, or foolish enough, to venture inside since, but for us, that one night was more than enough.